So this is 0308 hours GMT. It is timed at 0305 GMT in the morning of Thursday, the 27th of October 2022. This is the Baby Angel Geronimo editions of KhoodeelaarTV Television Channel, Part 1, being broadcast on the internet, not on satellite, not on terrestrial, not on cable networks. It's 0305 hours GMT, Thursday, 27th of October 2022. Now, the first thing we say about Rishi Sunak is that he's being sunk ever so slowly, but ever so certainly. He's been sunk by Cruella Braverman. Cruella Braverman. Now, Suella was looking on Wednesday at the so-called Prime Minister's question time. Suella Braverman was looking particularly down herself. She was looking as if she is struggling. She was struggling to smile at the past outing at Prime Minister's question, so-called by Rishi Sunak. Can we find any picture of Suella Braverman at that PMQs on Wednesday, the 26th of October? Sunak. PMQs. All right. Well, the Braverman sat next to Kemi Bad Enoch. Notice how I'm pronouncing it, Bad Enoch, as if Enoch was a good thing. The fact that she's a right-winger suggests that she could be thinking of Enoch Powell as a good thing. So she sat next to Kemi Bad Enoch. Cruella Braverman did, that is. Let's see where. And we can find where to find moving images. Moving images alone will produce the Braverman's face. So that was the amazingly, all these pictures, the pictures on the BBC and Telegraph, it seems that they have done a lot of work and they have created a space. They've created a space between Sunak's back and where Braverman was sitting next to Kemi Bad Enoch. There is a vacant kind of bench showing now. Where can we find that moving picture which alone can produce the Right. Let's see if the Guardian one has got. It should have, because it's the movie. All right, so. Right. So you can see the face of the woman to her left is clearly almost spontaneously smiling. But the face of Braverman, who has got her arms crossed, and her face is stiffly kind of being kept shut, like her lips are being kept shut, and her kind of mouth is being kind of like as if it has a lot of air in there, and she's holding the air, the breath in her face, in her mouth. Cannot show that on here, but that is what she is looking at. Kemi Badenoch has got Jeremy Hunt to her left, and then another man. So the actual lineup is Sunak is standing in front of Kemi Badenoch and Jeremy Hunt, and that white man, what's his name? What is his face? Oh, that is not a white man, but he's white-skinned idiot called James Cleverly. James Cleverly. What was the sound?
Stood on the steps of Downing Street and promised integrity, professionalism and accountability. But then, with his first act, he appointed a Home Secretary who was sacked by his predecessor a week ago for deliberately pinging around sensitive Home Office documents from her personal account. Far from soft on crime, I ran the Crown Prosecution Service for 5 years. I worked with Home Secretaries to take on terrorists and serious organised crime. And I know firsthand how important it is that we have a Home Secretary whose integrity and professionalism are beyond question. So, have officials raised concerns about his decision to appoint her?
Mr. Speaker, I just addressed the issue with the Home Secretary, but he talked about fighting.
Well, Sunak is a waste of space on that one. Not going to play his thingy. So Sunak is on the sinking slide, let's say, on Braverman. And Braverman is looking completely glum and as if trying to hold the breath. And she's looking really glum, and it cannot be denied. She is sitting to the left of James Cleverly. Now, Cleverly, whoever gave him the name, as we have commented before, whoever gave him that name, Cleverly, must have done that by knowing that he would be a stupid boy. So, in order to compensate in advance his shortcomings and his stupidity, they gave him Cleverly. Now, Cleverly, during the hours after the PMQs, did the rounds of the media, or at least some of the media, and he issued a statement or spiel. I didn't watch the actual television performance, but if he did that, it was the same script in which he said that Sunak appointed Braverman because of our experience. What experience? The most pertinent experience is in her leaking, because that is effectively what happened. Top security, whatever information. And so therefore, we say that it is only a matter of time before the Braverman loses her bravery and is ousted. She cannot be transferred to another department. She has to leave the cabinet, the least that she deserves. Okay, so let's see what the Indian papers are saying. Because the Indian papers, on Wednesday, the day after the appointment of Sunak as the Prime Minister, the Indian papers, the English ones that we accessed, like the Times of India, went to town in overly celebrating Sunak's Indianness, Hinduness, and the fact that he was the kind of Prime Minister of the UK. But on Thursday's papers, if I can find any, it is clear that the Indian papers have already started to retreat because they found that despite the fact that they had celebrated Sunak being the Hindu, Indian, to occupy number 10 Downing Street and create his own Raja according to the Times of India, he was coming across as way too feeble. Although he put on a kind of confident appearance, as some observers already said, the contents were feeble. And we predict on the evidence that the contents will continue to be feeble. And the Indian papers, unless there is a scandal concerning the UK's relationship with India, unless some scandal appears in that sector, Sunak will not feature as positively in the Indian media as he did on the Wednesday, 26th of October 2022. What is the Daily Mail saying today, Thursday, about the Sunak? So they're going back to attacking migrants. That's the most kind of persistent game the racist Daily Mail plays. When he made the comment about unlimited immigration, Sunak gave you the game again. He came across as a Priti Patel and as a Braverman. So let's see. And they're saying 38,000 migrants a year, 12,000 from Albania alone. So what are they saying there? They're saying that the extraordinary scale of the Channel migrant crisis was laid bare yesterday in a major test for Rishi Sunak's new premiership. Let's see what... We have been broadcasting for 15 minutes. And 30 seconds. So they are saying, the Daily Mail of Thursday, the 27th of October, that the extraordinary scale of the Channel migrant crisis was laid bare yesterday in a major test for Rishi Sunak's new premiership. The official in charge of tackling illegal crossings admitted for the first time that the asylum system was overwhelmed by the numbers trying to reach the UK. The Home Office's clandestine Channel threat commander Dan O'Mahony told a committee of members of parliament that there had been an exponential rise in arrival from Albania, trafficked by criminal gangs. He suggested it was equivalent to between 1 and 2% of the entire adult male population of Albania traveling to the UK in small boats. The MPs also heard how the government is now spending almost £7 million a day housing asylum seekers and other migrants in hotels, and the cost could continue to rise. It was among a string of extraordinary revelations at the Commons Home Affairs Committee yesterday, as MPs also heard this year has seen a record 38,000 people make it to Britain after crossing the world's busiest shipping lane in small boats. Some 12,000 Albanian nationals have arrived in Britain in small boats already since the start of 2022, up from just 50 in 2020. And the Daily Mail is continuing to shed crocodile tears about Netflix's Crown, which stages Diana's final moments. That is the alleged kind of recreation of the accident, so-called, that she was murdered in. Now, this is the page, inside page, where there is a picture of Suella Braverman. Suella was embroiled in probe over leak that raised concerns at MI5. So it's a question of time, just a matter of time, before Braverman is exposed and ousted from the government. And even this picture has got her face in a labored smile. She is putting on a smile that is clearly labored. So what is the item in the text of the main text of that item is saying? Well, it's a mixed kind of piece. Suella Braverman was probed by government officials as part of an inquiry into the leak of a sensitive story involving Britain's security services. The Daily Mail can reveal today. The Home Secretary was included in an investigation this year by a little-known unit within the Cabinet Office that handles leak inquiries. The leak related to a story about the government's plan to apply for an injunction against the BBC to stop the BBC from identifying a spy who was accused of using his position to terrorize his former partner. At the time, Suella Braverman was Attorney General, the government's chief legal advisor. And the story said that it was she who was seeking the injunction. It is understood that the leak about her plans caused concern for the security service, MI5. An investigation was launched by the government security group, a little publicized unit within the cabinet office, the government security group, GSG. As the leak involved an issue of national security, it is understood that MI5 also had a role in the inquiry. The Mail understands that the investigation ultimately found no conclusive evidence of who the leaker was, etc., etc. Now, this is not the first story. This is one of these stories. Last night, a cabinet office spokesman said, "We do not comment on alleged leak investigations. The disclosure of Mrs. Braverman's inclusion in the investigation may pose further questions for number 10 about the decision to reappoint her as Home Secretary on Tuesday. Mrs. Braverman was brought back only 6 days after she resigned for a breach of the ministerial code. The breach related to the alleged sending of a sensitive policy document from a personal email account on her mobile phone." And it says the new Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has since faced criticism for reappointing her to the Home Office soon after her resignation. There has been speculation that his decision was influenced by Mrs. Braverman's backing him for leader at the weekend, an endorsement which proved critical to his election as Tory leader and Prime Minister. Yesterday, Mr. Sunak was questioned over the issue in his first, well, we have already covered that, but let's see. Questions, Prime Minister's questions. He defended her, saying the Home Secretary made an error of judgment, but she recognized that. She raised the matter and she accepted her mistake. Downing Street also faced questions over issue and over reports that Simon Case, the cabinet secretary, had been livid at her reappointment. And number 10 spokesman denied that. But declined to deny suggestions that Mr. Case had advised against rehiring Mrs. Braverman so soon. In the Commons yesterday, the Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper asked a series of questions about Mrs. Braverman's reappointment and even asked whether the Home Secretary had been granted top-level security clearance, which allows her to view top-secret material. Ms. Cooper highlighted how the then Prime Minister Liz Truss had sacked Mrs. Braverman last week for sending sensitive documents from a personal email account, a breach of ministerial codes, etc., etc. So this is not a small matter. This is the major issue about the integrity, which is what Sunak boasted about. And there are other things like benefits and the cutting of the taxes. So what we shall be doing, looking at those as they kind of move from one point to the other or next point. We didn't broadcast any edition of this channel program on Wednesday. We didn't broadcast anything on Wednesday, the 26th of October 2022. So this is Thursday, the 27th of October 2022. The previous one we did on the previous series we broadcast was on 25th of October 2022. Now there are other issues that we shall be talking about later. Now, where to Pakistan and the one stage of the appeal that Imran Khan lodged against his being declared disqualified by the Electoral Commission. One court has rejected his appeal. Now, Imran Khan is, of course, in the process of doing the next appeal to the next tier of the court system in Pakistan. But he's not waiting for the outcome of that. What he's doing is preparing the final kind of arrangements for the long march, which will be done on Friday, the 28th of October 2022. That is the much promised long march, and the demand essentially at the center of the long march is to demand the holding of an election, general election in Pakistan. And again, the channels that are broadcasting the activities by Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf and Imran Khan are in the main supporting him and supporting the call for the long march. And Imran Khan has said many times that this will be the longest long march ever held in Pakistan. Now we go back to the point of East Pakistan in 1971, and we say that Imran Khan, regardless of what happens in the long march, regardless of what happens in his disqualification, etc., in Pakistan, today's Pakistan, Imran Khan politically owes unconditional actions, unconditionally owes actions over the murders, the attacks of the innocent civilians by the Pakistan military in 1971. And Imran Khan needs to begin the process or has to campaign while he is no longer or not currently head of a government or part of a government. He must emphasize the need for the government of Pakistan or governments Pakistan to pay damages, compensations to the survivors of the 1971 massacres and murders and rapes in Bangladesh, in East Pakistan, because the murdering military were treating the people as East Pakistanis. They were not recognizing Bangladesh at that time, and the Bangladesh was not recognized until the 16th of December 1971, when Indira Gandhi successfully mounted a combined military attack on the Pakistan army in East Pakistan and defeated them. So we knew about this only afterwards. That is to say, we know what happened during the 9 months after the 16th of December 1971. I was myself in hospital, and this is the date. This is the anniversary of my going to hospital, the 27th of October 1971. I was ill with a fever, and I went to hospital on the 27th of October, and I was admitted to the postgraduate hospital. And I later learned that my doctor, well, there was not a lot of doctor kind of patient interaction during that time, but I'll come to that. Part of the reason being that I was unconscious for a number of days, and the doctor in charge of looking after me or looking at as a patient was a man called Dr. Nurul Islam. Now that was 1971. So I was the first one on the queue, on the line. And the second one was Sheikh Mujib, and the third one was, of course, Qazi Nazrul Islam. So Nurul Islam had patients, Muhammad Haque, and the second one was Sheikh Mujib, and the third one was Qazi Nazrul Islam. And after the end of the kind of battle and the recognition, official recognition by India first of the state of Bangladesh, I stayed in a hotel in Hokirapul in Dhaka for a few days until I found transport, and I got a car. I hired a car with another man from a village called Bagirghat, and we went to Sylhet. So I was quite ill for, I think, for a few weeks. I could not walk properly, etc., etc. But a member of the family said that I had to prove that I was in hospital. Now, how did I prove I was in hospital? The country was a completely kind of destroyed state. So I traveled in a, what is called the auto rickshaw or auto taxi from Sylhet to Dhaka with that relation, and went to the postgraduate hospital. But there was no hospital operating at that time. By that time, it had been dismantled in terms of the kind of hospital, patients and doctors, etc., etc. So I asked for the records. There was no records because there was no paperwork. Now I shall go into that in a special edition. But that relation or relative was an absolute moron. How was I 200 miles away in Sylhet to control what was going on at the post-war hospital, postgraduate hospital? And I didn't know anyone because I was in a bed. I was in a bed and I had no idea who treated me at what stage, apart from the fact that in the records at that time, I heard the name Nurul Islam, and Nurul Islam came and gave me an injection or some medication at that time, but it wasn't a regular thing. But I became unconscious during, I was later told, I was left under the bed of a hospital because the hospital, during the attack by the Indian military on the Pakistan military, that hospital was evacuated. And I was one of the people, I don't know who else was there, but I was one of the people, one of the patients that was left in hospital, thinking that I would not survive. So a few days later, I was found under a bed of a hospital, and then people told me what had happened. And I was taken above the bed, from under the bed, and I was put on a bed, hospital bed. And then I saw someone, one of the patients, because the patients were there for a few days, like I was, and then we left the hospital. The patient was reading a newspaper that I had known, had obviously changed the name, and that gave me convincing kind of proof, not from any human being, but reading that newspaper, the name of the newspaper had changed. That newspaper used to be called Doinik Pakistan. It's a Bengali paper called Daily Pakistan. And it became Doinik Bangla, the Daily Bangla. So I knew that the country had changed. Now, so many people in the country, which is now Bangladesh, discussed what happened during the 9 months. But they did the discussions without knowing what actually happened. So they were just gossiping, sharing gossip, and the gossips were being kind of multiplied. Now, one woman that I must note here, I've been meaning to refer to her for a very long time. So our village, let's say Greater Sundarpur, and upstream from Sundarpur is one village whose name was Hogau, and there is a contention, there was a dispute about the name of that village, and that next village was Bongau. Now, during the months of 1971, after Sheikh Mujib's address in the race course in Dhaka, I saw a woman who didn't wear the usual sari. This woman used a kind of gaincha, and the top was also different from other women's dress. But this woman focused on me and another person from the village, and we were wearing a kind of promotional decoration on the fingers, decorations sent to the local doctor, Dr. Umar Ali, by one of the pharmaceutical companies that was selling the pharmaceutical goods to him. That was part of the regular mailing that he would receive every single day, if not every single day, at least few times every week. And it was a decoration, it was a new thing, like a calendar. And he wore that calendar like a watch. So I put on that one, and the other one was put on by the other one. Now, this woman, who also kind of begged from home to home, she saw that, and she immediately said that this was not as we said, a calendar, but it had some kind of automated, mechanical kind of powers in it, which is absolute rubbish. Now, what did she tell other people? I don't know. But the woman was absolutely crucial in spreading the rumor that was some kind of mechanical device. It wasn't. It was a calendar, and it was just like a decoration. Now, the stupidity of that woman, because she was illiterate and she had no knowledge about technology or anything. In any case, that was 1971. Technology, as we know it now, decades later, still doesn't have that. The Apple Watch didn't exist, and it wouldn't exist for another, 80, 90, 2000, another 30, 40 years. And even if that had a mechanism, what would it do? So there was this mysterious kind of phantom personification created by subliterate, illiterate, ignorant people, or people that they knew were educated, like I was and the other person was. And they then added together these, and they created a complete phantom personality, saying that these people are capable of doing extraordinary things, abnormal things, or things that ordinary people were not able to do. Most of the year 1971, up to 16th of December, well, up to the time when I went to hospital on the 27th of October, was spent when I was not ill, looking after my siblings and my mother. So how many siblings have I had? I had 2 sisters and 3 brothers and my mother. Those are the first concern. And also the rest of the family, my father's mother and some other relations, but mainly my siblings and my mother. And there was no knowing. There was absolutely no knowing what was happening. There was no telephone. There was no other means of communication whatsoever. And my mother's elder sister had a son who was in the Pakistan army. He had joined the Pakistan army before the events started in 1971. And what did she do? She would come from her village every day to our village, and she would start weeping and crying way before she reached our house. Somehow she believed that I could help her. I couldn't. I mean, her son was wherever he was, I don't know. I didn't know. But she would come with a load of demands, demanding that I gave her the precise information as to where her son was. I had neither sent him to the army, nor had I any idea about the army. And I had no idea where he was located. It turned out later, during 72, that he and 2 others from our area, who were apparently recruited in the Pakistan army about the same time, they had been posted in West Pakistan, what is now Pakistan. But my aunt was emotional, very emotional, and crying and weeping all the time. The most I could do for the several hours that she would stay, talking mainly with me, I mean, not my mother, because she thought that my mother didn't know anything and I did know a lot, which I didn't, about those events that were happening beyond our knowledge or our kind of witnessing. So my aunt would say, "Where is my son?" I said, "Well, I don't know." She would say, "When is he coming?" I said, "I don't know." And she would then start crying and weeping. She would say, "He's dead, isn't he?" I said, "I don't know." And this is the kind of sequence. It went on and it went on and it went on. And I had no idea what to say to her. And this I did for weeks. Weeks and weeks I did that. Of course, I never saw him because when he came back, he was, of course, alive, and he lived up to whenever he died in Bangladesh. Well, he died in Bangladesh about in this century. He died maybe 2005, 2006, I don't know, but he lived 72, 82, 92. He lived few decades after coming back from Pakistan. Now, these are very tense, personally tense and demanding moments and times. And these were very lonely in terms of lack of communication. Lonely in terms of lack of communication because there was no media, there was no newspapers, there was nothing in the village. So then I would go to Dhaka and I'd find out what is happening there. There was nothing that I could see physically that was happening that I could actually report back on. And it went on like that. I stayed a few months in Dhaka or a few weeks in Dhaka, few weeks, I would say. And then I spent longer in the village, looking after and consoling my siblings and my mother and my father's mother, and to some extent other relations. And there was no conversation. The main issue being tense situation. That was the thing. Apart from that, there was no tangible, real kind of information. So the main location is the Sundarpur Bazaar, where we would meet and have tea in the tea shops. But there was no topic that could be actually elaborated on, got into. There was no communication. As far as I'm concerned, I never interacted with anyone in the village, in the area, who gave me any information or asked me any question about any of these, whatever we know now, we knew after the 16th of December, 1971 had happened. So we were kind of like, in a social way, in an information related way, we were kind of walking zombies. We didn't have any substance. We didn't have any real information about any of that. And there were the village markets that took place and people did the shopping. But that's it. So the only time the Pakistan army was said to have been near our village area was when there were rumors that they had arrived in Dakadokkin. Now, Dakadokkin was about 2 miles from Sundarpur. There was no motor connection, there was no vehicular connection. So the military, if they would have to come to Sundarpur, would have to walk through the fields on foot. We didn't find out whether they did or didn't. Well, obviously they didn't, because we went to a place to the east of our village called Furushfal. And we stayed there for a week, I think, with my mother and my siblings. I don't think my father's mother could travel. So she stayed at home and we prayed that she would be safe. So when we went to Furushfal, there was nothing, because Furushfal too was inaccessible from the other side, which is Bianibazar, which is about 3 miles, 4 miles from Furushfal. So the road kind of connections were very different in 1971 from what they are now. So we came back to Sundarpur after a week or so, and it turned out that the military didn't come to Dakadokkin either. That's the nearest we came to having the prospect of having any encounter with the military. The reason why we went to Furushfal was because it was a given that the military would only come to shoot people, the villagers, civilians. There was no known armed people in the villages. So when we came back to Sundarpur from Purushwal, it was like it had been before. The military had not come to Dakadukkin and they had not obviously come to Sundarpur. That's the nearest we came ever in the whole of the 9 months. Now, the question that I have for Imran Khan is this: why were the military even threatening to go to places like my village? Or why were people fearing that the military were coming to any village? Why? what were the military doing or trying to do or trying to achieve by targeting the villagers for intimidation, harassment, and worse. Was any of that connected with what Imran Khan has been saying? Pakistan ka matlab kya, la ilaha illallah. Is that what the military were doing? Raping the women, which we only came to know about after 16th of December 71. They were attacking children, raping women, murdering elderly people. Was any of that part of the matlab for Pakistan, the purpose of Pakistan? Imran Khan has to go into these questions and answer them in his seminars, in his jalsas, in his broadcasts. He hasn't done that, but he must. Because as the member of the Lahore Lawyers Association said in his brief intervention, one of the seminars that Imran Khan obviously attended, that man said absolutely 100% correctly that the real Pakistan was East Pakistan. Imran Khan significantly did not come back on that comment, and he did not respond, and he did not want to know why that man had said what he had said at that seminar. Well, I know what the man said, and I know what the man meant. The real East Pakistan, well, the East Pakistan was the real Pakistan because the main engine, the political narrative and the political engine for a political future for the Muslims of post-British, post-Raj, post-August 1947 subcontinent came from East Pakistan. All the arguments, well, the 1905 events, there were two events during the first decade of the 1900s. One was the division, Bongo, the division of Bengal into East Bengal and West Bengal. And in the division of East Bengal from West Bengal, the people from East Bengal politically played the bigger, decisive role. What did they say? They said that the people of West Bengal, especially those running the businesses in Calcutta, were exploiting the people of East Bengal. And therefore the income, the revenue that was being derived, produced by the goods and commodities produced in East Bengal, were being retained by the businesses and merchants in West Bengal. Remember what was happening there? 1905 this was, let's say. So how many years is 1905 before 1971? 66, isn't it? 66 years before the 1971. The same claim was being made by the people of East Bengal that in 71, during 1970, the people of East Pakistan were making against the people of West Pakistan, saying that East Pakistan was being exploited and the main economic benefits that East Pakistan was owed was being kept from them by the West Pakistanis. So the West Pakistanis 66 years later, were behaving like the West Bengalis. Is that clear? And the main agitation for the separation of East Bengal from West Bengal came from the political leaders of East Bengal. And the other thing was absolutely right, and it is still right. Like Imran Khan has said, Imran Khan has made a pejorative statement, insulting statement against East Pakistan of the 1960s. He said that the people of East Pakistan in the 1960s were complaining about not getting help from West Pakistan or the rest of Pakistan when East Pakistan was hit by cyclones. Now that is an attitude that Imran Khan showed, totally inconsistent with the slogan of Pakistan ka matlab ke la ilaha illallah. If the East Pakistani people were as equal as human beings, as Muslims, with the people of West Pakistan, how did Imran Khan say what he said about the cyclones? So this is a serious question for Imran Khan to deal with and apologize for, because if he doesn't apologize for and if he doesn't deal with that, then no matter how many times he says Pakistan ka matlab ka la ilaha illallah, that statement, that claim about la ilaha illallah in that context will not have any truthful recognition, let alone any truthful impact. Now, I am the person who told Zulfikar Ali Bhutto in the 1960s, when Imran Khan was a schoolboy at most. I am the one who told Zulfikar Ali Bhutto in the 1960s in 9 questions. I told Bhutto that he was wrong. Now, 2022, Imran Khan is saying that M.A. Jinnah is his political leader and that Muhammad Iqbal is his ideological leader. Fair enough. But Imran Khan has left so many other leaders of the Muslims in the subcontinent. How does he do that? It shows Imran Khan's need to learn about the whole history of Pakistan. To put it simply, to put it kindly. As I said, I recognize what Imran Khan is doing, various slogans and these jalsas. But Imran Khan is only addressing 5% of the issues. 95% of the issues are not addressed. And I doubt if he understands the 95% properly. If he doesn't, he needs to understand them very quick and to share his understanding and update his understanding. Otherwise, this long march will not succeed. The Hakiki Azadi will remain a myth and it will evade, it will be a mirage. It will never be achieved without accounting, fully accounting for the 23 years of Pakistan, East Pakistan. There were various events that took place in the 1950s when Sher Bangla Fazlul Haq was involved with the coalition and he made a number of political blunders, let's say, or mistakes. But that doesn't take away the contribution that Sher Bangla Fazlul Haq made in the 1940s, 1930s and 1940s. So I separate those two things very clearly. And I say that Sher Bangla Fazlul Haq was a leader, a political leader who may not have reached the kind of stage that Muhammad Ali Jinnah was fortunate to reach. But in terms of solid substance of politics and political contribution about the future of the subcontinent, Sher Bangla Fazlul Haq was absolutely crucial. And the other ones, less known ones, Hussain Sarwardi was influential, not to the extent that Sher Bangla Fazlul Haq was, but he was influential. And I separate the times that they did their various battles and campaigns. And all of these leaders, although they were physically acting in various parts of the subcontinent and were not located in the same place at once, but their individual location and experience in those locations and their experiences in those locations gave them absolutely undeniable and uncomplicated, clear evidence that those forces that are now known in India as Hindutva forces, those forces are very much active already in that period. And to them, the Muslims were not inherently equal human beings. And so therefore, the Muslims, when the British would leave the subcontinent, the Muslim would not deserve the same kind of freedom. Now that is the matlab. That became very clear to Abdul Hamid Khan Bashani, Sher Bangla Fazlul Haq, and Fazlul Qadir Chowdhury to an extent in Chittagong. And they therefore were looking for ways to create the space for Muslims to survive, because the numerical majority of the Hindus in the subcontinent was undeniably overwhelming. And so therefore the Muslims had to find a way. The Muslims had to find a way to survive. Now when I met Zulfikar Ali Bhutto at the Institute of Engineers without any planning, I had no idea what the contents of his speech would be or how long he would be speaking. But when I noticed the first few paragraphs of his speech, I couldn't believe my ears and I couldn't believe my eyes. I could not believe that this man, Bhutto, who during the previous weeks, because he had been at the Institute of Engineers as a result of being kicked out of the government by the military government, by the head of the military government, Ayub Khan. And so therefore, Zulfikar Bhutto had dominated the main kind of news lines as one of the main kind of contenders against Ayub Khan, Ayub Khan's regime. That suggested that he had substance, political substance, and wisdom and knowledge. But when he gave his speech at the Institute of Engineers, I was there, I wasn't even taking notes. I had maybe a notebook and a pen, but I didn't make any notes. I was very interested in understanding as he delivered his speech. I wanted to understand as he delivered, because I made up my mind quite soon after he started to speak that I was going to ask him a few questions. That's the maximum that I set myself. Ask Zulfikar Bhutto questions. Because as a very avid reader of newspapers and news media, I could not help but see just how widespread his popularity among the newspapers being published in West Pakistan was. They were mentioning him at the slightest excuse. So, if for nothing else, at least for that background, I wanted to know what he would deliver at the event at the Institute of Engineers. So when he started speaking, I was very disappointed, and I found that Bhutto was shallow. Bhutto had no respect for the freedom movement against the British, and he had no context. I found him as giving a speech as if he was drunk. Not drunk like he was kind of unable to stand on his feet, but he was drunk in terms of the complete absence of any coherence and consistency. How could that be? I wondered. Now, I was one of I would say 700 or 800 strong audience at the Institute of Engineers, if not more. And I have no recollection as to who else was there, because I was not relating to anyone else. And I did not relate to anyone else after Bhutto had left, and I left the Institute of Engineers very soon after. But I was astounded at the emptiness of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. What was it that he was there to deliver? As I said before in previous editions, Bhutto had come to Dhaka to conquer the East Pakistan youth. That was the conquest that he planned in anticipation of a general election that he thought would happen eventually to get rid of the military regime of Ayub Khan. Yes, that's what the external, superficial kind of purpose was. So, what did he know about East Pakistan? What did he know? What did he care? I have yet to come across anything that Bhutto or anybody else from West Pakistan actually understood about East Pakistan. But this is decades later, but that time in 1960s, I was sitting there curiously, as I am always. I've been a curious student of evidence. And I had read about philosophers and thinkers before I went to that gathering addressed by Bhutto. And I found nothing of philosophy or depth or ideology or ideals or aims and purpose. So all of these emptiness kept coming across every time he answered or attempted to answer my question. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto became emptier and emptier and emptier until the 9th question I put to him, when he had nothing left in him. I had taken out whatever pretentious kind of ego he was made of. And then he turned to his right and he clearly was sweating. And then in the next move, he literally marched out of the Engineers Institute, away from the stage. And that was it. I don't think he stayed in East Pakistan for a minute longer than was necessary before the aeroplane took him back to Karachi or West Pakistan. How was it? How was it that an idiot like Bhutto was allowed to have this confrontation with Ayub, Awami League and Sheikh Mujib later? Why was it just me that noticed his emptiness? Not argument. There was no argument. There was no reason for an argument on the facts because he didn't have any facts. Why was he, for another few years, allowed to float around in Pakistan? Why wasn't somebody else there to stop him? If I could stop him, which I did, how was it that nobody else existed to stop him? That is West Pakistan. What about Sheikh Mujib? As I speak now, the 27th of October 2022, the anniversary of the day I was very ill and went to the postgraduate hospital for treatment, where I stayed until after the 16th of December. I think I stayed until the first week of January, I think. I can't remember anything being said about Bhutto, against Bhutto's emptiness. Forget about his hostility. Forget about his ego. Forget about his greed and forget about his ambition. I mean, this man, Zulfikar Bhutto, politically was totally empty to my knowledge, as I remember. And I remember reading, because there was no television, I had no access to television. When he apparently appeared at the United Nations General Assembly or Security Council, whatever the session was, organized by whether Security Council or General Assembly, about the hostilities, I remember hearing something about Bhutto that said that he challenged the world public opinion, and he said words to the effect that he was prepared and he was willing and he was ready to go to war for 1,000 years or 1,000 days, 1,000 something. Now, Bhutto, to my knowledge, had no connection with the people of the country. And he had no connection with the stream, the political stream of the country. And he had no connection or respect for the people like Maulana Bashani and Sher Bangla Fazlul and others. Whether they were alive or dead is different. Because I think in the 1960s, when he came to the Institute of Engineers, Sher Bangla Fazlul had passed away. Maulana Bashani passed away only in the same year, I think, about the same year or about the same time as Qazi Nazrul Islam, but so in the 70s. But Sher Bangla Fazlul had passed away a long time before that. And there is nothing that says about those who supposedly worked with Sheikh Mujib in the years to the 1970 election. There is nothing that shows that they examined Bhutto or what Bhutto was saying. This is not a wish I am making. I'm saying, had any of them bothered to notice what I had done to Bhutto, because looking back now, nearly 60 years later, I completely destroyed Zulfikar Ali Bhutto politically in East Pakistan. Who else did that? Nobody else did that. Nobody else could do that. So, did the person they now call the father of the nation, he is not the father of the nation, but that is what they say. What did Sheikh Mujib possess in terms of knowledge, in terms of courage, competence, that could actually he could put on the table against Bhutto? Well, he might have had all kinds of things in him, but I have seen no evidence of him putting any of that on the table. Remember, I covered Sheikh Mujib politically for 3 solid years, and my solid years is very solid. I found no evidence of Sheikh Mujib dealing with the genesis, the matlab, the purpose of Pakistan. Never. So if he didn't, then what on earth does he represent politically, even though he is dead now? What does he represent? Whose purpose was he representative of? None of the people who are referred to as part of the political kind of activities in East Pakistan in the 1960s, because that is the decade. 1950s and 60s are 2 decades that defined the events that happened later. 1950s were the decade after the 1940s. And again, there was no media that, well, I was in the village at that time, 1950s. So, and I became involved in the mid 1950s politically. During the election campaign that had 2 parties, the Jukto Front and the Muslim League. So I took the side of the Jukto Front. And it was all very indirect kind of information because we didn't have any direct access to the political news that was being mainly created in Dhaka. And what happened was that we didn't really come across serious analysis and argument. Now, going back to the shooting of the 4 Bhasha Shoinik or language martyrs, anyone who says that it was to do with Jinnah is a liar. The shooting took place on the orders of somebody in power in East Pakistan. It was not anything to do with Jinnah whatsoever. And the protests that are being reconstructed in a fantasy way long after the events. The protests of the 1950s about language movement were nowhere as significant as they are being now made out to be, or made out to have been. So that's then. But going back to the years now since Bangladesh became a recognized state in December 1971, the status of the Bengali language, let's forget about the Siloti and other languages of other parts of Bangladesh. The Bengali language is not respected by the Bengalis themselves. So let's go to the events of 1991, when the 30th of April 91 cyclone affected the southern coast of Bangladesh. And within 2-3 days, I became very active in the efforts that eventually raised from the UK government alone £50 million. I didn't see any of it. It went to the Bangladesh government. But I then started a campaign, a long-term campaign, a multi-purpose campaign for the protection of people from water-related disasters in the future in Bangladesh. And in the course of my inquiries, because I wanted to know what was available in Bangladesh at the time, I made contacts with the Bangladesh High Commission in in London, and I made contacts with the Bangladesh Mission based in New York in the United Nations. And of course, I made contacts with the Bangladesh officials in Geneva in Switzerland, where the United Nations Operation for Disasters, etc., were headquartered. Now, in those three kind of destinations, in the communication that I addressed to those three destinations, I found that if I spoke in Bengali, because I was trying to speak to a Bengali diplomatic person, I got one kind of response. And the response was very low caliber, low quality, and almost indifferent. I took a pause and I called from the same numbers. I called from New Road and I called from the same telephone. And I spoke in English. Now, what kind of response did I get? Invariably, I got a very different response, which was clear, respectful, or almost deferential. Because the quality of my English was obviously something that they registered with them. They thought I was an English person. Now, this is the reality. And this reality is persisting even now. For example, this guy is a Calcutta-based Hindu Brahmin called Shunanda Datta Rai. Now, Shunanda Datta Rai is one of the widely publicized journalists in India, or from India. Now, his wiki entry says proudly, he considers himself as a Bengali English. I mean, Shunanda Datta Rai could be the actual personification of what Thomas Babington Macaulay said he wanted to create. He's a total, utter mental slave. voluntary mental slave. And according to his descriptions, it could be biological slaves as well. So the relationship that the current Tower Hamlets, two members of parliament in Tower Hamlets, or from Tower Hamlets, both of them Bangladeshi women. Now, the first one, that is the one that has been there for the longer period, Rushnar Ali, is a 100% mental slave, complete and utter mental slave. Now, there was a television presenter on this channel slave program channel. That one apparently is from Silot, Sato. And that idiot is supposed to be an imam. And that idiot did the phone-ins on the program. And he refused to speak in Siloti or in Bengali to the people. Remember that channel slave was started as a channel Silot. And it does its business mainly on the basis as a parasite to the Bangladeshi community, mainly Siloti speaking, but mainly Bangladeshi. What on earth was that stupid boy doing and was being allowed to speak in English and call himself an imam? Because if he were calling himself an imam in the villages that I know and remember and behave in that way, I suspect that people would gather together and put him in a corner and give him such a bashing with the singla and lathis that he would take years to recover. Besharam Fua. He has no right to call himself an imam. He's a spy boy. What I'm saying is that there is no respect for the Bengali language or the Bangladeshi language. So anyone who says that these four were martyred by Jinnah is a serial liar. Jinnah made an opinion and expressed an opinion about Urdu. I'm not particularly saying that I supported what, or I would support what Jinnah said. Whoever advised Jinnah, and he said that on the basis of some advice, I'm sure, whoever advised Jinnah was wrong. But the point is that he had every right to express a wrong opinion about the future of the country, because that was just coming up. The country was just coming together as a kind of country, with all kinds of things in it. Looking at the numbers of people that have been shot in Bangladesh since 1972 by the government, how does the shooting of the 21st of February 1952, how does that incident compare with the mass murders and mass shootings of Bangladeshis by Bangladesh government? Has there been anything like the deification, the making into gods of those who were martyred on the 21st of February? No, not a single one. So these are the questions that have to be answered And without answering these, nobody has any right to assign blame to Jinnah or anybody else about the language. Now, I got involved in a argument about the language because this hypocrite, this Baratia kind of politician, Tony Hawk from Birmingham, who worked for Ershad Hussein as a diplomat, he has got going a kind of sub-industry about Bengali language being recognized internationally. I say to him and other morons that you cannot do a campaign for languages with other people when you yourself are reluctant to practice the language yourself. I'll give an example. To my understanding of relevance and to my understanding of kind of updated status of the language, Bangla language. I'm not a Bengali language person, but I am fluent in Bangla language and I'm very much familiar with the language and its history. And I recognize the rights of the original speakers of Bengali and Bangla to speak their language. And as I expect, they would respect my right to speak my Siloti language, mother tongue, and so on. Now, when I went to an event that Tony Hawk organized with the help of, what's his name? His first name was Abu Tahir Singh Kafani. Abu Tahir Singh Kafani took me to that event because I was actually talking to Abu Tahir Singh Kafani at some other kind of location. But when I went there, I saw the most stupid, degenerate banner in that restaurant where this was happening. Now, the banner was in English. For fuck's sake, you mental slaves, you morons. If you haven't got the right, if you haven't the confidence to have the banner about the language in the language itself, how the fuck do you expect this to be recognized? You shits. So there was a man from the then High Commission in London, Bangladesh High Commission. When I had this row with them, whoever was there, this man from the High Commission actually spoke to me afterwards and he said that he agreed with me entirely, which is what I would expect, because I would think that he was basically educated and he understood the logic. Now, Tony Hawk is a shit. Tony Hawk keeps doing this thing with parasites and idiots in London, mostly Silotis. And they keep doing this thing in English. And they say that they're doing it for Bengali language. It will never happen. The reason why the English language is as widespread as it is now is not because of any campaign for the English language. It is because of it being practiced by people. Now, I became introduced to the English language when I was a child in the village in Sondarpur, in Silot. And of course, I had a different environment at home, but my mother taught me all the stuff, initial stuff. When I began reading the languages and the scripts in Bengali, the scripts in Devanagari, Siloti script, and the scripts in English, I noticed that the English scripts had, compared to the other two, a different kind of expressiveness, communicability. Now, that was something that, as a pragmatic, practical aspect, attracted me. Not because it is English, but it is a language that carried the kind of means to communicate in a way that the others didn't. The others had other qualities. I shall come to talk about Devanagari script and the detailed knowledge my father had of the Devanagari, the Siloti script, and the Bengali Bangla language. And what has happened to Devanagari now and what should happen, etc., etc. But going back to the mental slavery of the Siloti speakers, I mean, of the ethnicity-linked outlets that are operating in this country, in the United Kingdom, all the publishers, main publishers, come from Silot. But they completely pretend that Siloti doesn't exist. They completely pretend that Siloti doesn't exist, and they have become the main practitioners of Bengali. Now, anyone who can listen to me reading or speaking in Bengali, and any of these morons doing it, would without any doubt think that I am a genuine natural Bengali and they are artificial ones. But I don't want to hide my Siloti identity. These morons, I mean, if they were around at the time during the years up to 1971, would happily speak in fake kind of Urdu, despite saying that they were, despite now saying that they are supporters of Basha Shoidik. These morons would try to impress their masters and betters, and I'll come to the use of that phrase, why I'm saying that, by speaking in Urdu. I witnessed a spectacle of utter, complete Siloti moron being absolutely mad. He's dead now. He came from Bianibazar, and that moron changed his name. The classic example, he changed his name about 4 or 5 times. During Pakistan period, he had a name with an end of the name with a Khan, Khan, like Imran Khan. And when it became Bangladesh, he dropped the Khan and became a Chaudhry at will. Now the shit did not know that the Chaudhry bit was the most condemnable, reprehensible bit of a name, thanks to the fight against the Zamindar system put up by a group of Hindu campaigners where in Bianibazar, shortly after Pakistan was created. That shit didn't even know the history of Bianibazar. So he put himself, after he decided that Khan was no longer fashionable, he became a Chaudhry. Shameless moron. Nobody from Bianibazar should call themselves Chaudhry. Because in recognition of the struggle of those 4 or 5 Hindus that changed the Jamindar system in the whole of Pakistan, nobody should have that audacity to call themselves a name that is connected with the zamindari rotten system that was gone, that was removed by the campaigners. They don't even know the history of Siller. They don't even know the history of Bianuzar. Now, when Indira Gandhi came to visit London during the period that she was in power, this same idiot, the former Khan and Chaudhry, I didn't know that he was there, but I found that he was there. But I'll tell you what he was doing physically. This happened at I think, Connaught Hall in London, not far from the India House in the Strand. And there were Indians, mainly Indians there. And I went there to see if I could see Indira Gandhi speak. But I couldn't because there are too many people, and I then left because of the possibility that there would be a stampede because the people are very indisciplined. And one of the people who were very indisciplined was this Khan Chaudhry. And when I saw him, this criminal was physically kind of in a state of utter nervousness, and he was kind of jumping in nervousness, like he was a balloon who was hitting the ground and then hitting against the ground and going into the air. He was that excited at the notional prospect of being able to see Indira Gandhi in the flesh. Now, the people who kind of have faced the Nehru family since 1947, and especially people who have witnessed Indira Gandhi's corruption when she was the most corrupt prime minister in India. I mean, who made her kind of recover from that corruption legacy? It was fucking Zulfikar Bhutto, the shit. It was the Bhutto, the shit, that gave Indira Gandhi the opportunity to put her corruption behind her. So people who have been denied their rights because of the domination of the Indian kind of mainstream by the Nehrus, they know better than any other person from any other part of the world that despite the fact that there was this independence in August 1947, the Nehru family created a new caste in India, or new layer of class after a layer of class, caste in India, which meant that they institutionalized discrimination of majority of the ordinary Indians by a small number of minority of Indians based on the minorities' association with the Nehrus, directly or through the Congress party, etc., etc. As I have said, the evidence shows that the reason why the BJP and the other Hindutva murderers came to power and have been there since 2014 is not because they did something miraculous or did something wonderful for the people of India. It was the legacy of the crook, the adulterer and the liar, Jawaharlal Nehru. The fucker was sleeping with the wife of the imperialists. I mean, how low can you get? And he is the one who fucked up the United Nations sensible resolutions and proceedings about the future of Kashmir. Kashmir should never have been occupied. It was Nehru who was the central element in moving to occupy Kashmir. And for 75 years, Kashmiris have been massacred, genocided, raped, murdered. When Zulfikar Ali Bhutto went to India in 1973, I think, or 72, I think 72, with his teenage daughter, Benazir Bhutto, the Indian papers corruptly focused on her being so sexy. I mean, what on earth were they doing? I mean, this was not a fashion parade. It was not a kind of cinema tour. There was no discussion about Kashmir in the papers. I mean, in Calcutta, I bought about more than 100 books, the ones that I could read, because the other languages I could not read, but the English ones I could read. So what I'm saying is that if I bought 100 books, then there must have been, in various other languages, several hundred other books. And the ones that I did manage to read before I left Calcutta, there was one theme only. There was one narrative, one line, and the line and the narrative and the theme was that Bangladesh was created by India. It was not a kind of contentious thing. It was just a straightforward line that they made. So when Benubhushan Chaudhary told me in the Aberfeldy Road, sitting in his car, that Bangladesh was owned by India, he wasn't far wrong, because the Indians and the Hindus in Bangladesh consider Bangladesh as non-existent without the Hindus owning it. Or when the Hindus don't own it or control it, then Bangladesh doesn't exist. Now, this is what Sarojini Naidu was talking about when she wrote that Muhammad Ali Jinnah was the ambassador of Hindu-Muslim unity. Because Sarojini Naidu and others knew what the Hindu agenda was, what Nehru's agenda was. Well, Nehru's father's agenda was that they would exterminate Muslims as soon as the British went. And they were planning on doing that. They were planning on doing a Gujarat on the Muslims on the assumption that there would be no Pakistan or no separate country for Muslims. So the political constitutional law formula that created Pakistan, the matlab, the idea of Pakistan, it was not a minor achievement. It was one of the political world's absolutely historic, magical achievements. Not because it is called Pakistan, but because it averted serial genocides of Muslims. Look at the treatment of Muslims in today's Russia. Muslims are not given even a third level of recognition, human rights by Putin. And people from Chechnya, which is a Muslim majority area, are routinely suspected, beaten up, rounded up, arrested, confined, detained, etc., etc. Women are raped. In the Uyghur region in China, Muslim women are targeted for rape by the Chinese, the Han ones, because they are considered as beautiful because of their Turkish origin. That's what they say in public. So they're raped. Muslim women in Uyghurs are raped, violated, murdered, etc., etc. Who is raising any of these issues today? Not Imran Khan. The Muslims in Burma. Everywhere there is a Muslim population compared to the population of the other faiths or non-Muslim faiths, which is bigger. Muslims are targeted for rape, murder, and violation. So if you put together all of those incidents and evidence and trends, you can see what Jinnah was doing. He knew, as did Shere Bangla, as did Fazlul Qadir Chaudhry of Chittagong, as did Abdul Hamid Khan Bashani, that if the British left with one India behind, where there would be automatic domination by one religion against a smaller religion compared to the big religion. And that is what would have happened. The Bangladesh would not exist. Pakistan would not exist, today's Pakistan. And Muslims would be systematically abused, violated, raped, massacred, genocided, and would have been done for the last 75 years. Now, when Sheikh Mujib gave his political spiels in the 3 years that I covered his political activities, 1967 to 1970, Sheikh Mujib had not one single international dimension in his politics or to his politics. In fact, he didn't have a really domestic dimension either. So for Sheikh Hasina to publish this book and call it Sheikh Mujib's prison book, this is mainly in serious need of questioning by comparing its contents, whoever wrote those, with the rest of Sheikh Mujib's political utterances everywhere. Because that book, so-called, doesn't match Sheikh Mujib's remainder of Sheikh Mujib's speeches and his utterances. So I go back to Pakistan ka matlab kya, which I refer to as being the Pakistan of the references that were made by that man from Lahore Bar Association at that seminar. East Pakistan. The contempt shown to East Pakistan by Ayub Khan in the book that has had to be seriously amended because of our protests. The friends, not masters. The contempt was that he, Ayub Khan, in his book, completely denied the existence of such leaders, such saints as Hazrat Shah Jalal Muzarra the Yamani. I mean, Ayub Khan didn't even appear to be aware. He might have been aware, but nothing he said in the years that he was in power since October 1958 until he was removed by Yahya Khan. Nothing he said suggested that he knew about the 360 disciples, followers of the Hazrat Shah Jalal, nor of the role of the Hazrat Bazid Bustami in Chittagong. And there are other people, other saints in that soil, in that land, that blessed our land and left the land for peaceful future. Those saints did not commit religious murders. Those saints overcame the hatred, the ignorance, the darkness, and the satanic influences by being Muslims of the highest character, human beings of the highest character. And their high character attracted the non-Muslims, the local non-Muslims and others. How dare Ayub Khan write such a stupid book? And there is no recognition of these saints by Sheikh Hasina. No. She did recognize Shah Jalal, but it's completely opportunistic, dishonest, and corrupt. The Shah Jalal airport, Hazrat Shah Jalal Airport, was only named after Hazrat Shah Jalal because Sheikh Hasina found out that if she did so much as call it Sheikh Mujib Airport, that name would be demolished within 24 hours. Such is the divine blessing brought to the land by Hazrat Shah Jalal that there is no one who would dare question that name. That is the blessing that we are blessed with in Silot. And with the blessing of Silot, the rest of Bangladesh is blessed. We shall come to an end with this program at this point, at 2 hours, I think. Coming up to 2 hours, and we shall be continuing on other aspects of the updates that are overdue in due course in later editions. This is coming to, what is the GMT now? 05, 010 coming up, I think. And the length of this broadcast is coming at 765,432. This is 2 hours. So we shall end it here with the promise that the baby angel Geronimo has been witnessing everything that has been going on with the degenerate followers of the depraved Boris Johnson, the depraved Cruella, and the depraved Liz Truss. We shall update on the witness by Baby Angel Geronimo in due course in the next editions.